So hi everyone, welcome to the Healthy Helix, your personalized roadmap to health. I'm Nancy White, the CEO of Inogene Diagnostics.
Hi, and I'm Lois CEO of immunePower. So together, Nancy and I are exploring health through the lens of genetics, personalized medicine, and prevention. And we want to help you make the best decisions you can to live your healthiest life.
We're really excited to talk with you about a topic that's at the top of everyone's mind and in the news on a daily basis, and that's COVID-19. There's a lot we can learn through our genetics and how you can take preventative action to keep you and your family safe. We want to start with talking about prevention because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and simple things like washing your hands is so critically important. Not touching your face and just being really cautious about physical distancing and keeping yourself in a healthy environment are critically important. Lois and I have done a tremendous amount of research over the last several months to understand how your genetics can play an important role in keeping you safe and healthy during this time. And Lois, I believe you had a scare with COVID back in March. And through that personal experience, you've had a wealth of information that you've learned, and you've got a lot of recommendations that you can share with our listeners today to help them keep their immunity strong. So can you start perhaps by sharing your experience with us?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually traveling in the US in March 17th, when the orders came to repatriate. I was flying back from Washington, D.C. to Vancouver. I had some sick people behind me on the plane, got home, I did self-isolate, and I could feel that I had something. And so I'll talk a little bit later about some of the preventative health techniques I use, but did lose my sense of smell, was struggling to keep my throat and my chest clear. And I really think that's the most important, is keeping your nose and your throat and your chest clear. And it took about 10 days to recover, but I learned a lot. And I've been fascinated, of course, with making sure we take a look at what can we learn about COVID. And especially on the business that we're in, how can our genes play a role in this virus susceptibility and disease outcomes? So I'd love to just share a little bit about what we've learned as well about the genetics on that. So good to hear some of that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I can't wait.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we developed a test called immunePower. And what we do is we look at the most common genes that have been linked to COVID. And so I'm just going to talk through a couple of important ones you may hear about on the news. And then I'll actually show you some of the results on my report. So preliminary research is showing that there's some genetic variants in a couple of critical genes that increase our susceptibility to COVID-19. And so one of them is ACE2, which is angiotensin converting enzyme 2. And this is a protein that sits on the surface of many types of cells in the human body, including the heart, the gut, the lungs, and inside the nose. And what it is a key kind of cog in the biochemical pathway, and it regulates blood pressure, wound healing, and inflammation. And so what happens with ACE2 is there is an amino acid or an enzyme in it, and this acid has a pocket which does a great job in capturing a bad protein or destructive one called angiotensin 2, which can affect blood pressure and damage tissues. But this protein isn't the only thing that fits in this ACE2 gene receptor. It also, unfortunately, fits the SARS-CoV-2 spikes. All the spikes we see on the news, they fit very nicely into the pocket of this particular gene. And so it kind of gains entry to the cell then through this ACE2 gene, and then hijacks some of the cell's protein making machinery. And that's when you get an infection. So people who have higher ACE2 have got more of these entry points where they might have an infection. Another one I think you might have heard about is blood type. So it actually turns out that people with blood type A have got a higher predisposition towards getting COVID. Of course, it never means you're going to. It just means you've got genetics that have a slightly higher link to it. So people with blood type A are 1.8 times more likely than those with type O to get COVID. And those who have other blood types are about the type A is about 1.5 times higher. So those are just a couple of critical genes, the ACE2 and the ABO, that we've been studying and taking a look at in order to help people know if they might have a slightly higher predisposition. And I do want to just again state that a lot of this research is preliminary, and that, but we're trying to put information into people's hands as much as possible so that they can use what's out there to stay healthy and know whether they might have a higher risk. So I'm just sharing with you what some of the outcomes and report look like. This is green is good, red is where you have some gene variations. And just to show, we cover off a number of different things here. First of all, we take a look at some of these ACE2 genes in COVID-19. We look at the ABO blood type genes. We look at, there's some good genes researched on SARS. It's not circulating right now, but it is a good, we can tell you whether you've got gene variations. And there's a few very common ones linked to flu that can tell whether you might be susceptible to influenza. If you get the disease, then you're sometimes inclined to have some outcomes, things related to respiratory disease or a cytokine storm and sepsis. And it was interesting to me to see that this is my report. I'm more red on cytokine storm. I've both had a bit more flus than I think I should have had in my lifetime. And my mom actually passed at Christmas, and sepsis was the reason that she passed due to some complications with cancer. But that was the process by which, you know, they're created a problem. So it was interesting to me to see that I have some susceptibility, which of course probably was there for my mom as well. And then finally, we're hearing as well, and I really want to emphasize a little bit later in our chat, how much diet is important in staying healthy. And there are some research studies being done and recently being published around whether people with healthier diets are less likely to contract COVID. And of course, the answer is yes. When we're healthier, our whole body has got the ability to fight any sort of viruses that come up. Remembering that our bodies are exposed every day to virus and to other bacteria. We're meant to be able to fight these pathogens. We're symbiotic with them. And so if your body is strong, then you're going to do just fine around COVID. And so we like to really start with, you know, what's some of the diet and how can you keep healthy. And the research right now is really strong in the areas of vitamin C, D, and zinc. And it's interesting because we had not been testing the zinc genes previously, Nancy. And when I saw this, I went, isn't that funny? There's different times where I've thought maybe zinc is, you know, maybe something's wrong with that balance in my body, because we look at all the genetics related to vitamins. And so when I saw this, I went, okay, that's something that I need to look at. And actually, when I did have COVID and COVID symptoms, I did up my zinc. And again, I just really think that that's part of the whole boosting. So those are just a few of the things that the research so far has been able to show is linked to genes that have been researched and have a predisposition to perhaps make you a little bit more susceptible. Remembering that when we study genes, it's predispositions. All we're trying to do is give you a roadmap into where are your genes the strongest and where are they the weakest, so that you can focus your attention on just keeping any areas that are weak as strong as possible, and that you're protecting as much as possible. So it's been exciting to do this research and to study and to see what we can learn about genetics and what they can tell you about your predisposition towards getting something. And I particularly like the diet part as well. So that's just a little overview. And now I'm super interested, because I know you guys also have a new test that's going to be looking at COVID-19 and how pharmaceuticals and medications can impact that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you and your company are looking at, Nancy?
Yeah, I'd love to. Science is such an amazing technology that there's just so many innovations happening. It's so exciting to see the stuff you're working on, and the ability to share that kind of information just to consumers at large. It's very powerful. So as a reminder to our listeners, the science of pharmacogenetics is really about looking at your DNA to help you understand how you're personally going to respond to medicine. And 98% of us unknowingly carry at least one gene variant that will impact how we respond to medication. So we are getting ready to launch a brand new product which looks at the medications that are most commonly used in the hospital setting if you are admitted with COVID. So it's bad enough that you get COVID to start, but if you're in the situation where you need to be hospitalized, It's really important to understand how your body responds to medication, and in particular, the medications that might be prescribed to you while you're in the hospital. Right now in Canada, forget COVID, but adverse drug reactions are the #4 cause of death in our country. And that's very staggering. So not really understanding the mechanisms of how medication is processed from one individual to another is really scary when you think of it in a holistic point of view. But what's exciting is there are tests like our test available that help you understand specifically how you're going to respond. We help you understand things about not only how the medication will work for you, but whether or not you're going to be exposed to greater adverse events or side effects. And we also help you understand the rate at which you process a medication. So these can be critically important, particularly if you find yourself in the unfortunate position to end up in the hospital battling COVID. In addition to suffering the consequences of catching COVID, there are other downstream side effects of what this pandemic has caused to our society. And one of the biggest ones are the mental health implications. And in fact, experts are calling it a echo pandemic following in the wave of COVID, as many people are experiencing increased anxiety, some panic, depression, the impact of being physically distanced from others and isolated at times. That's very stressful. And we also have a panel that focuses specifically in products prescribed for mental health and pain. And again, if you are in a situation where you need to take a pharmaceutical product to help you cope or get through these different types of conditions, we can help you avoid the trial and error approach by helping you understand which medications you will respond to and which you won't. So these are very powerful things. There's a lot of new information emerging about the echo pandemic surrounding some of the feelings that people are experiencing. And as we enter the holiday season, again, COVID aside, the holiday season can be a very stressful time in people's lives. There are lots of pressures put upon us, either through family engagements, work engagements, the time of year. And even we've entered this period of daylight savings time where I live in central Canada in Ontario, and right now it is getting dark at about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I don't enjoy that. So when we think about the compounding pressures that are surrounding us in society at large, pandemic aside, there are times when people are going to need pharmaceutical interventions to help them. And we've got a great product that will help you make the right choice, so you're not taking medications that will not work for you, and in some cases might even make you feel worse. So science has evolved so rapidly, and this testing is available to the general population at large.
Well, that's fantastic, Nancy. And, I just love that so much is available for us. And a lot of people actually don't know just how sophisticated some of the information is that we have at our fingertips now. And so again, being able to go right back to genetics, which is your foundational roadmap and blueprint for your body, and be able to work with that can just make such a difference. And absolutely, if a person needs to take some medications, you want to be sure you're taking the right ones for your body. We also just love to talk a little bit more about the natural things, and in our report as well, we give you recommendations if you have got some variations in some of these genes. But I also like to go back to some of grandma's remedies. And so when I had COVID, and I wasn't sure when I came home if I just had a flu or a cold, but I knew I wasn't well and I was exhausted. And so I have a whole list of things that I captured, and I can share them through links as well for people. But just to do if you think you may be exposed, or if you think you just want to keep yourself healthy. But the first is, if you think you're exposed, the number one thing, when I talked about the ACE2 and how it works into the membranes in through the nasal and the lungs, The virus loves the nose and it loves the nasal cavity, and that's where it actually builds up. And so the number one thing I do, and many people I may not use techniques like this, but it's something called a nasal lavage. And you can do that with a neti pot or products like Hydrosense, but you do use a salt saline solution up through the nasal cavity to reduce this spread and the amount of bacteria. And it just keeps everything under check. And so I was doing that 2 and 3 times a day. I always do it when I get a cold. I read about it like 20 or 30 years ago. And, you know, I used to suffer laryngitis because I don't have my tonsils. And so I use this quite frequently over the years to prevent laryngitis or throat infections, but it's ideal for using with, if you think you've had any sort of a virus exposure, it cleanses this proportion out. That's where the virus tends to grow. And then it's inhaled in the lungs. But aside from that, so many other things, grandma's remedies. I took a hot bath, Epsom bath every single night. It raises the body temperature, really good for you, gets the blood moving. The magnesium supports your immune system. Drink bone broth. That's really nourishing with the amino acids for your body. Get fresh air and exercise. Virus doesn't like UV light and sunshine, so getting outside is fantastic, and the natural frequencies support your body. Vitamins, I'm a huge advocate because most of us are nutrient deficient in our diets in North America. So we know definitely the research is showing, as we mentioned, CD and zinc are critically important. But really, you know, we love when you find out exactly through your DNA which ones are the most important for you genetically, because they're a little bit weaker. And I would suggest for everybody, you know, take a full range of vitamins. And then, lastly, the other thing I have all the time in the winter is a diffuser with essential oils. And essential oils like, peppermints, lavender, eucalyptus, tea tree, lemon have natural antiviral properties. You know, again, not claiming any of these to be a cure, but they're antiviral, anti-inflammatory, immune boosting, and subtle levels that are lovely. So I have a diffuser that's always going in my house, particularly in winter, to just purify the air, breathe it in. And then I have all of the teas, with echinacea, zinc, and others, lots of clove and garlic and other things in my meals. And that's just kind of the natural things and the things I do to keep boosting my immunity. And then kind of one last acronym to share with you, just to really remember about your health overall, is INVEST. And so we always talk about invest in your health. And INVEST stands for intuition, which is goals or intentions around how you want to be healthy. Nutrition, vitamins, exercise, stress, sleep, and toxins. And if you can balance all of those in a proper way where you've set great intentions about your health, eat food, mostly plants, and, just real food when you're having your nutrition. Take vitamins. I recommend multis, omegas, Ds, and probiotics generally, and a B complex, as we talk about in another one of our episodes around our personal health. Women, especially over 40 and 50, it's really important. Or if you have a lot of stress, Bs are really important. And we know exercise is important, a little bit every day. Yoga, walks are great. Stress and sleep, get your 7 to 8 hours, get more if you think you're not well, manage your stress levels. And then finally, clean up your home environment of toxins absolutely as much as possible. And if you can keep natural ingredients, natural things around you, you don't put stress on your immune system. So there's just this wealth of things we can be doing every day to stay healthy, and just really want to encourage people to just take little steps every day to really live and be your healthiest.
Yeah, that's amazing, Lois. I think that what's exciting for the listeners is there are lots of different things we can choose to do. And they're as simple as where we started this podcast with, wash your hands and wear a mask. Those are just 2 very simple steps. But as we have more interest in caring for our own health and the health of others, there are so many resources available, tools, tips, and strategies to really help you head into our coming up long winter. Unfortunately, for the hemisphere we live in, there are going to be more dark days ahead, unfortunately. But I know I feel very empowered to take control of my own health and really help those around me with these very important and simple strategies that can really help.
That's great. Well, thanks, Nancy. You know, there's just so much we can learn about COVID and immunity risks through the genetic testing and how to stay safe through medications, and so much we can do proactively. So we just really wanted to share some of that information with people, just because there's such great stuff out there. We'll try and create a few links to different things in this podcast, just to be sure you've got access to it. And we would love to hear from you and answer any questions you might have in any upcoming episodes. So what would you like to learn about personalized medicine? So you can send your questions to health@dnapower.com.
Thank you so much for your time today, Lois. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. Be safe and stay healthy.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care.